What would you do if the child you raised with your whole heart came from the daughter who abandoned him without a second thought and came back 25 years later demanding payment for the life she never lived? She didn't even knock. She just dropped the truth in my lap like a burning cigarette. 2 pink lines, a defiant glare, and the words, "And don't even think about asking me to get rid of it. This baby is your problem now." That was how my daughter Mildred told me she was pregnant. No joy, no fear, no hint of love. Just entitlement wrapped in recklessness. She was 18, still living in our house, still acting like the world owed her something. And she made it clear she wasn't going to be a mother. We were. My husband and I had always loved children. We'd dreamed of having more, but time and money had gotten in the way. And so, when she shoved the paperwork in front of us, forms to sign over her parental rights, we did it. Willingly. She didn't want the child, but we did. And that child became the sun around which our entire world turned. We named him Philip, and from the moment we brought him home, he was ours in every way that mattered. He was gentle even as a toddler, always reaching for my hand with soft, chubby fingers, always giggling when his grandfather made those ridiculous animal sounds at bedtime. By age 10, he was curious about everything. He'd ask why the sky changed colors at sunset, or how music worked, or if souls could miss people they never met. He was the kind of boy who made you believe the world might still be good. But he also asked about her. Not often, not loudly, but with a kind of ache in his voice that told me this wound was quiet, deep, and old. Every Mother's Day, he wrote 2 cards, one for me, one for Mommy, the woman he had never known. He kept them in a box under his bed, envelopes addressed to nowhere. And when he was 11, he tried. 13 times. He asked her to meet. 13 times. She said no, or worse, said nothing at all. Ed. After the last attempt, he stopped asking. Instead, he poured himself into school, friendships, building things. We paid for college in full so he wouldn't have to work while studying. Every year. One of us took him on a vacation, just the 2 of us, because we wanted him to know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that he was loved. By the time he turned 22, Mildred had become a ghost in our lives. We didn't talk. She had us blocked on everything. All I knew was that she'd gotten married to someone across the country, moved away, and was living a life without us, without him. And honestly, I was relieved. Because by then, Philip wasn't just our grandson. He was our son. In every heartbeat, in every memory, in every hard-earned smile. Then came the Thanksgiving call. Philip had just finished telling a story that had us all laughing around the dinner table. Something about a rude customer at his now thriving car cleaning business. He'd turned the business into a success, even sending us 15% of his profits every month to thank us for raising him. We never asked. He just did it, insisting he wanted us to enjoy the life we put on hold to raise him. Then his phone rang. He put it on speaker without thinking, probably assuming it was a client. Instead, it was a voice we hadn't heard in 25 years. "Hey, Philip, it's your mom." The room went silent. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't calling to reconnect. Mildred wanted something. She always did. He answered calmly, like she was just another stranger. "I'm doing well. Hope you are too." She asked to meet. He didn't say yes. Just, "I'll think about it." I offered to go with him. So did his father. His eyes lit up like a boy again, like maybe some part of him still hoped for good in her. We didn't know then what she had planned, or how far she'd go to tear our lives apart. She chose the most expensive restaurant in town. Not a cozy cafe or a quiet place to reconnect after decades. No, she picked a place where even the breadbasket came with a price tag, and where the lighting was soft enough to hide any trace of guilt. Mildred arrived late, breezing in like a celebrity, wearing a designer knockoff and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in the mirror just before walking in. She didn't hug her son. Didn't even look at him for more than a second. "The meal budget tonight. Who's covering?" she asked as she slid into her chair like she'd never left. Philip shrugged, trying to hide the flicker of hurt in his eyes. "Whatever." She smiled like that was the answer she was hoping for, and ordered lobster ravioli and a bottle of wine without so much as a glance at the prices. I sat across from her, my hands folded in my lap, watching every move, every word, knowing this wasn't a reunion. This was a transaction waiting to happen. And sure enough, as soon as she spotted Philip's phone on the table, with a photo of Amber lighting up the screen, her voice turned syrupy. "Oh my, is that your girlfriend?" "She's gorgeous. Reminds me of me when I was younger." Her laugh was brittle, her eyes calculating. I stayed silent, every instinct screaming that she was baiting us for something, but I didn't know what. Not yet. Then, Without warning, the mask slipped. I've been struggling lately. Life's been hard. My ex-husband took everything in the divorce. I need help. She paused, then leaned in, her voice suddenly colder. I'm going to need about $14,000 to lock down a new apartment. I'll send my bank details. If you can get that transferred before the weekend, that'd be great. She said it like she was placing an order at a drive-thru, like she wasn't asking the child she'd rejected, the child she'd ignored through every milestone, every heartbreak, every card he ever wrote her and never sent. And yet, Philip didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He simply nodded and waited for the food to arrive. I opened my mouth, ready to tear her apart, ready to say every word I had been holding in for 25 long years, but under the table, I felt a gentle pinch on my leg. It was Philip. Not now, his eyes said, so I swallowed my rage and bit my tongue until it nearly bled. Back home. The silence in the kitchen was thick. Larry made tea, the old ritual we always turned to when emotions threatened to overflow. I was pacing, arms crossed, heart racing. Philip sat at the counter, calm as ever, scrolling through his phone. I don't understand how you can be so calm after that. I finally said, that woman abandoned you. She never showed up for you. And now she's demanding money like she's owed something. Philip looked up from his phone, a slow smile spreading across his face. Not smug, not cruel. Just sure. Mom, he said quietly. I told you, I've got this. He turned his phone toward me. On the screen, his banking app was open. The transfer was in progress. To who I asked? To her, he said. My heart sank. How much? 14. What I asked, confused. He tilted his head, smiling wider now. Dollars. For a second, I was stunned. She asked for money, he said with a shrug. She didn't specify how much in the text message, so I sent her $14. That should cover a decent sandwich, right? Larry let out a bark of laughter, nearly spilling his tea. I followed right behind, laughing so hard my shoulders shook, the tension pouring out of me like steam from a kettle. My son, my sweet boy, was no fool. Later that night, when Philip had gone to bed, his phone kept lighting up with messages. I saw them without meaning to. The screen kept flashing while it charged on the counter. Mildred was furious. The texts came fast, one after another. Where's the rest of it? This isn't funny. You better send that money before I do something you'll regret. I woke Philip and showed him. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, looked at the messages, then typed something simple before heading to shower. Sorry, budget's tight this month. Hope the $14 helps. That was it. By noon, she had called 17 times. He let each call go to voicemail. Then, as we sat in the kitchen eating leftover turkey sandwiches from Thanksgiving, he played the messages aloud. We listened as her voice unraveled, from passive-aggressive to desperate to unhinged. You think this is a joke? I'll show you what happens when you mess with me? I turned to Larry. That sounded like a threat. I think we should call someone. Philip shook his head. Calm. Collected. She's always been like this. Big threats. No follow-through. But I knew better. Mildred didn't need a weapon to be dangerous. She had something worse. A talent for destruction through chaos, manipulation, and the bitter conviction that the world owed her everything. And we hadn't seen the worst yet. 3 days passed. 3 days where the silence made me nervous. No more messages. No more threats. Just a hollow space where the storm used to be. Philip went back to work like nothing had happened, hosing down tires and shaking hands with customers, wearing that same easy smile he always wore. But I knew him too well. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes lingered on every unknown number flashing across his screen. Then it happened. He called me in the middle of the day, his voice tight, almost breathless. She's here. Mom, he said. She came to my business. She's making a scene. I didn't even hang up. I just grabbed the keys, called Larry downstairs, and we drove like the tires were on fire. When we pulled into the lot, I could already hear her, shouting loud enough to rattle glass, her voice slicing through the air like a siren that wouldn't stop. We rushed inside. Customers stood frozen, half staring, half pretending not to, their cars mid-service and their payments half processed. And there she was, in the middle of it all, her arms flailing, her voice rising with every breathless demand. You owe me, she shrieked, eyes wild. I brought you into this world. The least you can do is keep your mother off the damn streets. Philip stood there, calm as stone, hands raised just slightly, like a man trying to pacify a loose wire. Ma'am, he said, voice steady. You're disrupting my business. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Ma'am, she snapped. You're calling me ma'am? Now I'm your mother. You ungrateful. I took a step forward, heart pounding, ready to intervene. But Larry's hand gripped my arm. Let him handle it, he whispered. And so I watched as my son, the boy I raised with lullabies and scraped knees, stood firm against the woman who gave birth to him, and then walked away. He didn't yell. He didn't plead. He walked toward her slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, his voice soft but immovable. "You need to leave now, Beth, or I'll call the police." Her eyes narrowed. "Go ahead. I'll tell them how you promised to help me and then backed out. I have the texts. I have the proof." From the corner of my eye, I saw Ralph, his assistant, discreetly picking up the phone. "Good boy." Philip gently placed his hand near her elbow, not grabbing, just guiding. "I never promised you $14,000, he said, low. "You asked for help. I sent what I could. $14. That was the help I was comfortable giving. Now, please, leave, before this gets worse." That's when she pulled out her phone. She shoved it in his face like a weapon. "You see this, I've been recording everything. I've got your voice, your words. I'm going to post this online and show people what kind of cold-hearted man you really are, turning your back on your poor, desperate mother." I felt my stomach turn. Not because of the threat, but because I knew what that video could do. Edited just right. One moment taken out of context, one sentence clipped in half, and everything Philip built could burn. And then she stormed out, nearly knocking over a shelf of air fresheners, and was gone. The fallout was immediate. 3 customers canceled their appointments on the spot. Ralph tried to apologize, but the tension was already thick, the damage beginning to spread. Philip stayed professional, smiling, nodding, offering discounts with quiet grace. But I saw his hands. They were shaking. That night, we sat around the kitchen table, the air heavy with what we didn't say. Philip barely touched his food. Larry stared at the wall like it had answers. I tried to find the right words, but nothing fit. Then Philip's phone buzzed. It was a link from Amber. He opened it. I leaned over his shoulder, and there it was, the video. Mildred had posted it to Facebook, edited, cropped, captioned in a tone that could squeeze tears from strangers. She made herself the victim, painted Philip as some heartless millionaire who turned away his fragile, struggling mother in her darkest hour. The comments poured in like acid. "What kind of monster does this to their own mom? I'll never use his company. Hope karma finds him fast." Larry slammed his fist on the table so hard his tea sloshed over the rim. "This is slander," he growled. "We should sue." Philip shook his head. "No, that would drag this out. And she wants that. Attention. Conflict. It's fuel for her." He looked up, and I saw it again. That same gleam he had the night he sent the $14. "I have a better idea." And when he said it, I believed him. Because this wasn't the face of a man defeated. This was the face of a son who had drawn a line, not out of hate, but out of love for the family that never walked away from him. The plan was never spoken out loud. It didn't need to be. Philip didn't pace or rant or crumble under the weight of online hate. He sat quietly at his desk, watching the storm Mildred had unleashed swirl through his business page like a wildfire. But instead of running, he built something better. He built a match. 2 days after her post went viral, he uploaded a video of his own. Not dramatic, not defensive, just him, alone in his office, dressed in a crisp button-down, speaking with the calm clarity of a man who had nothing to hide. "My name is Philip," he began, looking directly into the camera, "and I want to tell you the full story." He didn't beg for sympathy. He told the truth, how he'd been raised by his grandparents, the ones who stepped in when his biological mother walked away before he could even say her name. How, for years, he tried to reach out to her, how he wrote cards she never opened, messages she never replied to. How, after 25 years of silence, she returned, not with apologies, not with warmth, but with a dollar amount and a deadline. He showed screenshots, the messages, the ask that came before a single question about his life. "I don't hate her," he said, his voice low. "I wish her healing, but I won't let someone reappear after a lifetime of absence and rewrite the story for their own benefit. Especially when the truth is simple, I was not raised by a mother who loved me. I was raised by parents who chose me." That line, it cracked something open. Within hours, the tide began to turn. Support poured in. Old clients left comments praising his kindness, his honesty, the way he went above and beyond for people. Some even made appointments just to show support. And still, Mildred wasn't done. Because people like her, they don't walk away quietly. A week later, Philip received a call from the local police. A complaint had been filed. The charge theft by deception. Mildred had told them he'd promised to loan her money, and that by not following through, he'd stolen from her. It was absurd on its face, but still, it was a formal report. It had to be investigated. He had to go down to the station. He asked me to go with him. I'll never forget how composed he looked, standing at that counter, explaining the situation to an officer who looked like he could barely hide his skepticism. He showed the texts, the 14th transfer, the absence of any agreement beyond that. The officer chuckled. "So you did give her money," he said. "Just not the amount she was expecting." "Yes, sir," Philip replied. "I helped, just not the way she wanted. The case was closed quietly. The officer even told us, off the record, that this belonged in civil court, if anywhere at all. I thought it was over. I should have known better." 3 days later, Mildred came to our house. I opened the door, and for a split second, I didn't recognize her. She looked hollow. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unwashed, her eyes ringed with that brittle kind of desperation that doesn't just come from poverty. It comes from knowing you're out of options. "Please," she whispered. "Can I come in?" Against every instinct in my body. I let her inside. Larry came downstairs when he heard the door, and his face darkened the moment he saw her sitting at our kitchen table. "What do you want now?" he asked. Voice clipped. She burst into tears. Big, loud, theatrical sobs that echoed through the walls, the same kind she used to fake when she was 10 years old and wanted to skip school. But now, they were laced with something deeper. Fear. "I've made such a mess of everything." She cried. I didn't know how to ask for help the right way. I panicked. I handed her a tissue, but kept my heart 100 miles away. I'd seen this movie before. "Why did you try to get Philip arrested?" I asked. Eyes locked on hers. She sniffled. "I wasn't trying to get him arrested. I just wanted someone to make him help me." Larry's jaw clenched. "You tried to manipulate the law to force your own son's hand." She turned to him then, and that old sparkle crept into her voice. "Dad, you've always understood me better than Mom. You always saw the good in me, and I saw it happen." The tiniest flicker of sympathy passed across his face. A softening, a momentary lapse. She saw it too, and pounced. "Philip's business is doing so well," she whispered. $14,000 is nothing to him, but to me it would save my life." "Mildred," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "He owes you nothing. Nothing. You weren't there. You signed your rights away. You disappeared. And now you're back because you think he's an ATM. But he's my son." She pleaded. "No," I said, standing now. "He's ours. We raised him. We held him when he cried. We stayed up nights when he had fevers. We sat in the front row at every school play. Where were you?" She turned to Larry again, ignoring me. "Please, talk to him. He'll listen to you." And to my horror, Larry hesitated. "Maybe," he said softly. "Maybe we could help you out. Not the full amount." But I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Larry." He looked at me, used my full name. "She's still our daughter. Margaret." "And what does that mean for Philip?" I snapped. "That you'll go behind his back? That we'll reward her manipulation before we could say another word?" The front door opened. Philip stood in the hallway, frozen mid-step, seeing her at our table. "What's going on here?" he asked, quietly. "Your mother came to apologize," Larry said too quickly. Mildred nodded. "Yes. I just want a fresh start." Philip looked at me. I said nothing, but he saw right through me. "Is that really why you're here?" he asked, eyes narrowing. Mildred put on her most innocent face. "Of course." "Why else?" And then, without a pause, Philip replied, "To get money from them, because I wouldn't give it to you." Her expression cracked. The smile dropped. Her voice dropped an octave. "What did you expect?" she hissed. "You're living the dream while I'm drowning. Someone in this family needs to help me." Philip's voice turned to ice. "I think you should leave. Not until I get what I came for." "And what's that?" Mildred, he asked, deadly calm. She turned to Larry. "Dad was about to help me. Weren't you?" Larry opened his mouth. Closed it. I said, maybe," he muttered. "Ashamed." Philip's face fell. I saw it. The betrayal. The heartbreak. "And it shattered me. She's using you," Philip said quietly. "Just like she's trying to use me." Larry said nothing. I placed my hand on his arm. "Listen to your son. Please." Mildred stood, the chair screeching back behind her. "Fine. Be that way. I'll figure it out. I always do." And with that, she slammed the door behind her. But the damage. It lingered in the silence she left behind. The quiet after she left didn't feel like relief. It felt like the moment after an earthquake, when the walls are still standing, but you don't know if they'll hold through the next aftershock. Philip didn't come home that night. He texted me to say he needed space, and I didn't argue. How could I? He'd just watched the man who raised him, the man he called Dad, nearly hand his abuser a lifeline. Over the next few days, Larry was quieter than I'd ever seen him. He walked slower, spoke softer, and apologized more than once, but it wasn't the kind of apology that fixed anything. It was the kind that came from a man realizing he'd almost failed the very person he'd spent a lifetime protecting. Then came the dinner. Not just any dinner, a dinner Philip arranged. He said he wanted to meet Mildred again. One last time. He invited us. Said it was a peace offering, though something in his eyes told me peace wasn't the real goal. The restaurant he picked was even fancier than the last one. Glass walls, a wine cellar you could walk through, soft jazz spilling from the ceiling like perfume. Mildred arrived early, dressed to impress. Makeup flawless, hair curled, nails done in that glossy white that screamed money I don't have. She looked like someone who had convinced herself she was still in control. Philip greeted her with a hug. She blinked, surprised, then leaned in like it was a family reunion and not a setup. "I'm so glad you called," she said, eyes sparkling. "I've been thinking about you non-stop." Philip smiled. "Let's just enjoy dinner tonight," he said, and for a while, it almost felt like he meant it. He asked her questions about her life, her plans, the future. She talked, endlessly, about the apartment she wanted, the view from the balcony, the luxury countertops. "You don't have anything saved up?" he asked gently. She waved a hand. "I've never been good with money. That's what family is for, right?" And then, like someone who forgot where the line between private thoughts and spoken words began, she leaned in. "Between you and me," she whispered, "the police report was just the first move. If that didn't work, I was going to call some of your big clients. Tell them you were mistreating your poor mother. Cry a little. People eat that up." My heart stopped. Larry's jaw clenched. "Philip." He just nodded like she told him the weather. "That's quite the strategy." She giggled. "Oh, it's not manipulation. It's just knowing how to push the right buttons." He tilted his head. "Even if it means lying about being homeless." She shrugged. "I needed help. And it's not like I ever got any from you before." Philip sat back, folded his hands on the table. "Interesting," he said, his tone light. Then he pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen, turned it toward her, the red circle still glowing. "I've been recording this entire conversation," he said. "Every word, including your admission that you lied, that you planned to sabotage my business, and that you filed a false police report." Her face drained of color. You can't, this is illegal." "Actually," he said calmly, "in this state, I only need one party's consent. That's me. And now, I have everything I need to clear my name and protect my business." "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. "I don't need to use it. Unless you force me to." She stared at him, desperate now. "I'm your mother." "No," he said firmly, standing. "She's my mother." He turned to me, reached into his wallet, and dropped enough money on the table to cover everyone's meals. "And then some. Dinner's on me. Enjoy it, if you can." We walked out, not looking back. But she didn't stop there. 3 weeks later, she showed up at his engagement party, uninvited, holding a gift bag and wearing a grin stretched too wide. "Surprise," she said, stepping into the doorway like she owned it. "Heard my baby boy is getting married." Philip blocked her entrance without raising his voice. "How did you even know where we live?" She shrugged. "I have my ways. Aren't you going to invite me in? I brought champagne." "You weren't invited," he said, "and you're not welcome." Guests were starting to notice. Amber appeared beside him, concern in her eyes. Mildred's face twisted as she looked at her. "Oh. So you're the reason he turned on his mother enough," Philip said. "Leave. Now!" She shoved the bag at him and walked off in a huff. Inside that bag, a baby onesie, white, soft, with the words "Grandma's favorite" printed across the front. And a note, "Whether you like it or not. I'll be in their lives too." It shook him. Not because of the threat, but because it was clear now she wasn't going to stop. She wanted access, control, legacy. We considered a restraining order, but legally, there wasn't enough. Not yet. Then came the arrest. It wasn't because of us. It was because she'd stolen Richard's credit card and racked up thousands in charges. The police searched her apartment and found the notebook. Inside, there were detailed plans, names, addresses, Amber's work schedule, even notes about Philip's clients and how to manipulate them. It was methodical. It was cold. They gave her 18 months for fraud. Not for stalking. Not without more. But it was something. Philip sat in that courtroom with his head high. She never looked at him. And when the gavel finally came down, what washed over me wasn't triumph, and it wasn't vengeance. It was something quieter, something softer. It was peace. The wedding took place that following spring, an intimate gathering, beautifully simple, overflowing with joy. At the reception, while laughter floated through the air, Philip gently took my hand and led me aside. Then, with that quiet smile of his, he placed a small box in my palm. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a heart, for being my real mom, he said. For loving me when she didn't. I couldn't speak. I just hugged him, knowing this moment, this life, was built on everything she walked away from. 2 years later, Amber gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. He called from the hospital, voice cracking with joy. They're perfect, Mom, absolutely perfect. When we arrived, he placed the little girl in my arms. Meet your granddaughter, he whispered, Margaret. And as I held her, soft and warm against my chest, I knew something with absolute clarity. Mildred made her choice. We made ours. And in the end, love, real love, is what remained.